There is nothing like having new toys. So what we have here is a TRX38 G2. This is actually my third TRX38. Honestly, I love them. They are one of the best shooting, most forgiving bows I've ever put in my hands. Not sponsored by Mathews, don't get paid to say that. It's just what I feel. So today, been waiting on it a few months. It just came in. We're going to pull some parts off of my old bow, put on this one, get it set up. We're going to get to tuning. Come along with me and let's see what we can get done. Alright, so we're going to start by putting our arrow rest on. Now, I'm putting an AAE Pro blade on here. I'm a big fan of the blade arrow rest. They keep it simple, stupid concept. So, I actually like to take the set screw out of the front and I put my bolt in that hole. And the reason I do that is because I'm going to put 2 bolts in my arrow rest. So now that we have our arrow rest mounted, we're going to set our center shot. The center shot's a bit of a misnomer in that it's not really the center of the bow. What we want is our arrow running parallel through the bow or parallel to the riser of the bow, or we want to set it to the recommended center shot of the manufacturer. For Mathews, that center shot is 13/16 plus or minus 1/16 of an inch. So we're going to set it to 13/16 and then I'm going to do my paper tune. With my paper tune, if it doesn't shoot a bullet hole at 13/16, I'll move the top hat bushings and the cams or limbs before I change the center shot. Typically for me, my bow will tune at 13/16 and I usually have to swap the top hat bushings from left to right from the way they come from the factory. So that's where we're going to go to start with. We're going to set it up at 13/16, shoot it through paper, see how it tunes, and if I have to, I'll move the bushings. Now the sight that I'm shooting is a Excel Achieve XP. I've had it for a year or so. Works good though. I really like the Excel Achieve sights. Been shooting, had a different model before this, before they had the XP, and had really good luck with them. They don't vibrate, don't make noises, and they don't move when you shoot. So meets all of my requirements. Now these strings are the factory zebra strings, and I'm going to set it up and tune it with them because that's what I got right now. But I do have a set of solid white strings coming with green inservings. We don't hear much about it nowadays, and most people want bright colors or they want mixed colors and 2-color or 3-color strings or strings with stripes. But years ago there were some companies that done tests, and when you use a white material or a natural material, it doesn't have the dyes. It actually has less wax in it. The dyes don't affect the strength material. It literally is actually a stronger string than what you get when you use 2 or 3-color strings or strings with a stripe in them. The stripes look good. The 2-color strings look good. For me, I prefer just a solid white string, and I'll change up the color of the servings because I want the stronger string I can get. Now, stabilizers are another thing that we're going to have a totally separate video on. But for now, I'm going to start with stabilizers, basically the same setup that I was shooting with my last TRX38. I'm going to start off with what I think will be a good balance, just for the fact that I haven't been shooting in a while. And you'll see that I'm not going to shoot a lot of weight. And when we do a stabilizer video, which is going to be coming up soon, we'll talk about why that is. And why you might want to shoot a lot of weight, or you might not want to shoot a lot of weight. So there you have my basic setup. Obviously I've still got to stick my loop on. I'm going to stick my peep in. So we're going to stick it in the press over there and get the peep in it. Get it down where it's about right. Get it turned. And then stick the loop on. Now we got the bow pressed. Going to get my peep sight stuck in the string. Just kind of getting a good guesstimate of where I normally shoot it at. Getting it pointed the general direction I want it. After I get my loop put on, I'll do some fine tuning there. But anytime you press a bow, once you back it off, you want to make sure that the strings are in the groove good. Make sure they're hooked on the post like they should be. Then you can go ahead and back it off. Alright. So we got our peep sight stuck in the string. And I got my bow out, back up in the vise, and we're going to go ahead and put a loop on. Now I do my loops a little bit different than a lot of people in that, I burn the end of my loop first. And you really want to just heat this and let it melt. You want to keep the flame moving under it. Let it melt to make a nice ball on the end so that when you pull it tight, That'll pull up against the string. The big thing that I do different is, instead of tying this on my string and wrapping my loop around my loop pliers and retying the other end, I actually have a set of marks on the top of my tackle box that I know makes my loop length. So I burn one end first. I line up with those marks, cut the other end, burn the other end down where I want it, and that's how I measure my loop length. Then I'll tie it on and pull it tight with my loop pliers. So we just got the loop stuck on the string now. I've got an October Mountain Products level on here. Just got my bow leveled. So I'm going to clip the other level out on my arrow out here. Now, if I'm not careful, if I just look at the level, I'm not taking into consideration the amount of weight that it puts on my arrow rest, and actually bends the blade down. So me knowing that I'm shooting a blade rest, I'm going to lift my arrow so that it's not putting as much pressure on the rest. So it barely is touching the rest, because when I get to full draw, you're going to have very little weight on that arrow, and so it's barely going to push that blade down. So what I want to do is set it to this level when it's barely touching the blade. Not all manufacturers are the same. Mathews actually puts the plunger holes in the center of the bow. Some companies, the grip is in the center of the bow, so you might find that one will tune a little different, but I'm going to set mine so the top of my arrow is even with the top of the plunger holes. And that'll put, I'm shooting a 23 diameter arrow, so that'll put the center of my arrow about the center of the plunger holes. Alright, so we've got our loop on, got it where we want it. Nice and tight. So again, the material that I mentioned is a BCY braided Spectra number 23. The big thing with that stuff is just it's extremely durable. I've actually had times when I was ready to change, put a new string on my bow, that I pulled my loop off the old string, put on the new one, just to keep from having to fine tune that loop length again. So I've been very impressed with this stuff. The other thing is it's nice and soft. If you look if you're shooting like a handheld release or a hinge, which I'll be shooting a hinge, if you're twisting your hand as your anchor point, it just won't twist the string. Loop material is nice and soft. Some of the harder strings are more stiff that might work good for hunting with a caliper. When you're shooting a handheld release and you twist your hand, it'll actually torque the string, especially if you're shooting high let off. So you really want, for target purposes, you really want a nice soft loop material, and you'll get a lot more benefit out of that. So before we get too serious with tuning or anything, the timing's off a little. So if we look at this little tab right here, a little point, they should be in the same place on both ends, and then they're not on this one. It's a little bit off, probably only a twist or two, but we're going to get it lined up, and the draw length is actually just a shade long for me. And what I've noticed on these bows is usually with this 28.5 inch module, I like it where that tab is just about in line with the string when we look straight onto it, and it's a little past it, so I'm going to shorten it up. Probably going to be close to 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 to 3/16 in that range right there. So alright, so we're going to make sure we're centered in our press. One twist. Of course, we're always making sure that we've got our strings and all in the groove good before we take the weight off the bow. So bottom half, just a little bit of gap under the string. And that's pretty close right there. So we're going to go ahead and put a few twists in the string, get those tabs aligned with the cable, and then we'll go from there. So we're going to try 5 twists. 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's pretty dang close to where I want it right there, right at the top of the cable. And right at the top of the cable. Now we've got it timed where we want it, got the draw length where we want it. We're going to go out and give it a try, see how it shoots a little. Alright, so that's a little bit right tear. We're going to shoot another one, see how it does, and we'll go from there. And that's the same thing, so we got the point hitting here and a knot going through here, so we're getting just a little bit of tail right tear. Same tear basically every time. Alright, so we've got our center shot set at 13/16, and we've been outside and shot. And if you look at our paper tear here, we're hitting point here, and the nock's going to the right. So according to Mathews, we've got a center shot set at 13/16, which is their recommended. And if you're paper tuning, if you want to move the shims, you move them the same direction of your tear. So we're going to move our cam to the right. For me, it's not surprising. The last 3 of these bows I've shot have been the same thing. I've had to swap the bows, or to swap the bushings from the way they come from the factory, put the small one on the right side and the bigger one on the left side. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to swap those bushings around, just go opposite of what they come from the factory. And the way we're going to do that, you want to start with your press barely holding the bow, so the weight's on the limbs, and break this bolt loose. The bolt does have a little bit of blue Loctite on it, or medium Loctite, in this case a yellow, but we're gonna put something back the same way. Once I have it set, I'm gonna put a blue Loctite, which means it's not permanent, so I can take it back out if I need to. Now, once we have that bolt out, we're gonna press the bow just enough that the strings go slack. If you look, we got play in the cam there. Strings are slack. So we're going to take the Allen wrench, push that axle out. Now it is important that when we started this, I made sure that my limbs were square. Otherwise, when I take my axle out, the limbs will be off center. It'll make it really hard putting this axle back in there. Alright, now that I've got my axle out, we're just going to slide this cam down and just set it right here out of the way. No need to take the strings off the cam or anything like that. Tophat will just slide right out of the limb here. You may have to pull the limbs apart just a little to get it out. Alright, so I'm going to slide. And I'm just going to flip them around. I'm going to put one from the left, now I'm going to go on the right. I'm going to put the one from the right and the left side. And once again, I'm going to have to pull the limbs apart just a little. Put that Tophat back in. I'm going to bring my cam up here. You have to spread just a little. Get a little light on the subject here. There we go. Once we get that in, slide that axle back through. And we're going to put our bolt back in. Now, it's important that we put the right amount of torque on this bolt too. If you over tighten it, it'll cause you to have some bearing problems. So we want that cam to be loose. If you look, it just falls down by itself. If I over tighten it, you see it sticks. So we want to be just loose enough that that cam will still move freely. The Loctite is going to be what holds it in place. And once again, it's got yellow on it, which is a medium Loctite. Now, once I get it tuned, I'm actually going to put some blue Loctite on it, which will be a medium as well. It won't hold it permanently, but it'll keep it from vibrating loose. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other end. We're going to go back and shoot it through paper. Alright, so we've got our timing adjusted. We got everything set where we want it, draw lengths where we want it. We shot it through paper, we were tearing right. We moved the shims on the cams. We're going to shoot through paper again, see how it's doing now. Well, that, folks, is why you use a bowsling. Alright, so if you look here, basically we've got a perfect bullet hole now. You've seen the tears earlier, where we were tearing just a little bit to the right, probably half to 3/4 inch right. Moved my cam to the right, same direction the tear was. Now you see I've got a perfect bullet hole. For me, honestly, the paper tuning is just a starting point. I've said it before. The main thing I want to know is that when I move something that should move the tear, it moves. Now I'm going to go out, I'll end up doing line tuning, I'll do some walk back tuning. Basically, I'll get the bow the most forgiving I can get my bow, and I'll be ready to shoot. Thank you for joining us on Archery Universe. I really appreciate you hanging around while we set up the bow and got it tuned to this point. Hopefully you'll tune in for future videos. We do a little more advanced tuning, do some walk back tuning, and do some line tuning at some longer yardages. God bless. Shoot straight. I'll see you next time.